Hey guys, so it is after hours. It's completely dark. All I got is this lamp light right here. I don't got anything above me. It looks kind of creepy when I look over here because my eye looks like weird to me. I'm not used to doing a vid like this. So I just wanted to. I was just thinking about my life. I just wanted to think out loud, talk out loud. Maybe someone can relate to it. Um, I want to tell a story about my college days and things coming from it. This is a really bad angle for this light. It needs to be like right here, but I ain't got no room. Got no room over there either. So, anyways, um, I could actually get a college degree in criminal justice. I got all the hours for it. I got all the credits for criminal justice. Um, I did all the courses in it and everything. I just did more hours than the degree allows, so I have to file an appeal to do that. Um, and when I was in college, before I attended college, I also wanted to do psychology because I felt like that would be a really great thing for a criminal justice degree. But yeah, I just and the reason how I got more hours was because I at the last semester of criminal justice I switched to, I believe I did accounting. Accounting was my last one. And that's how I managed to get more hours, was because I switched my degree over. Um, Actually, I can get a criminal justice degree. I believe I did all courses because I was going to get my bachelor's, and I was going to, but there was something that messed up. I made a mistake, and something didn't happen the way I expected it to, and it just kind of. So I went back to college, changed my to accounting, but there's also a deeper story to that, and that's what I want to talk a bit about. Make this video for. So, um, yes, I wanted to be a DEA agent because there was a lot of stuff that was going on in my family. But the tripping point was what something happened to someone else. Turned out that was a huge lie, but I'm not gonna get into that. But I had family who was into drugs. Heroin at the time was a big thing, and fentanyl was just coming on the scene, and there was I don't even think you hear about it anymore. But there was also crocodile. Um, but yeah, I was reading all these books. I read all the DA lists. I read a bunch of stuff. Mostly the things that I was looking into was meth and heroin. Those were my two most important ones I was looking into. I was looking at countries, and this was all on my own. This wasn't part of the degree. I was going to the library. I was researching things. I learned how different countries, like Myanmar, use puppies to fund everything. They tried to switch to like coffee beans and different exports, but nothing could compare to poppies. So that was the thing, and so I was really, I knew all the stuff. I even met with DA agents in college. And, we were discussing how to do it, how to apply. There was an office in Houston, and it's strange because in the United States, and this sounds strange even right now. I'm sorry about that, light. I wish it was more even. But in the United States, you can be president at the age of 35. That's the youngest. Let me double check that. I believe that's true. Aged. I believe it's 35. Yes, you have to be at least 35 years old. What's interesting is that alright. So I'm getting two different answers here, but I'm just gonna say 35. Interestingly enough, in the United States, to be a federal agent, the cutoff age is, I was gonna say 35 too, because that's what it is. But for the FBI, it's 37, and for the DEA, you can't be older than 36, and you must be. It's strange. I'm sure there's a reason for that. I don't know what the reason is, but they cut your age off in your late 30s. So technically, I could try, but um um. But the reason why I decided not to was because I had made a mistake. It's not a big mistake, but I mean the writing was kind of on the wall already. In the behind the. I'm sorry about the slide, guys. It's either too bright or it's not bright enough. Um, the writing was on the wall for me. Even going in, well, maybe not going in, but more I was doing research for like for the entry level, for like police officer work, to do applications and things. I was thinking, I couldn't. I don't think I could make it. Cause I also was in criminal justice class in high school behind my parents' back. By the way, um, so I wanted to do the DA's thing, but the police thing was getting to me more. The reason was because the I had to think about my past. Everyone has a past, everyone has a background, but the diagnosis I had in high school, I had um I had a certain problem that was with me for my entire time in high school. Not college, it was in high school. And I felt like all that stuff was going to come back at me. it wasn't drugs or anything. I was heavily against drugs. And people in my life later on, when I got out of high school, there was a lot of drugs. Uh, Not with me personally, but I lived with my mom. But things weren't going so well where I had left, and yeah, there were lots of drug activity, and not like I said, not with me personally. I wasn't in any of that. I was with my mom for a few years before she passed away. I was up with her until she passed away, and but yeah, I just thought about my past in high school, and when I was when I was younger, when I was, I talked about it before. When I was 8, I was in that, I call it a mental hospital. It was a behavioral thing, and I was there for 10 days. I talked about this before in a previous video, but I thought about why would they want me, of all people. Is it shifting cut? Why is it going? I guess, yeah, this light. It's trying to auto-correct in color. So why would they want me? Now the federal system, that's different. That would, they need people like that. So that's not a problem. But for the police work, for state and local, state, county, and city, state, county, and city, they don't really like seeing stuff like that. I mean, maybe it depends, but it's on a case by case basis. But the writing was on the wall for me. But I kept on doing it because I knew the Fed, they think in ways differently than the rest of us. I've seen some very quirky people wanting to work for the FBI. You'd be surprised. The most eccentric people join the FBI. I've seen a few of them. I was the only one who wanted to be in the DEA. Never met someone who wanted to be CIA. That would, I don't know what you would. I don't think you'd be criminal justice. Although that might, someone would do it. I'd imagine someone would be eccentric enough to do that. What else? But DEA is usually very hard on things, like the FBI. I knew the CIA and the DIA power struggles. I knew about that. I didn't see the CIA as very good. It was very against what I was interested in doing. And people understood what I was trying to do when they could read in between the lines of what I was doing to understand people beyond the drugs. And people were like, I see what you're doing, but I'm not sure it will work. So that was kind of my stance on it. And the federal level they do need a lot of variety. People who can think in different ways. That's how they think. That's how they do things. That's how you keep national security. That's how you keep things going. You want different people with different mentalities and mindsets. And they got the money to do it. State, county, they're not willing to take that liability. So, yeah, that was my thing. But so I wanted to transition from police work to that, at least for a few years. That was my plan. But I had made a mistake, and it's a minor mistake. But I didn't feel like it was something I should continue doing. So, what happened was, man, I'm giving out all my past right here. Um, what happened was, I know it sounds stupid. People are gonna be like, "Why are you acting like that?" Told me the same thing when I was after I did it. People were like, "You're too hard on yourself." So what I did was, you know, I tried weed once. And I tell you right now, I did not like it. I did not like it. And this was during the time of fentanyl, and they were hiding um, fentanyl in well, it was actually a mix of fentanyl and K2. K2 was also the fake weed, you know. That was a big thing back then. And they were like, you could have killed yourself doing it. But then they were like, you're also so hard on yourself. I was like, and I regretted it, you know. I felt guilty. I was like, I really, literally, the only way I could describe it was I felt like shit. Right? And yeah. I pretty much gave up on myself. And when I was working with someone, um, they were a manager of a small business that I met the owner one time in the library when I was there, and he said, "You want to work for me?" I said, "Okay, sure." And one of his managers, you know, we would talk. He was like, we were straight laced and everything. And I was expected for it. At first, he didn't like me because I had scraggly hair, you know, like I looked like in my previous videos. I had holes in my pants. I looked like I was just off the street. But when he learned more about me, he was like, okay, cool. Because what happened was, there was a neighbor. Let me back up a bit. This guy plays a role later on in my life. So I worked for this guy. He happens to know one of my brother's friends works at. He has his own business right next door, and they would just happen to be talking to each other. Now I never met this guy, but I knew he was a friend of my brother's since middle school, and they were talking, and somehow my name came up, and the guy asked, "Do you know who that is?" And he told him who I was, and then that guy had more respect for me. That's how I got that respect. I asked him, "What did that guy tell you about me? What do you mean? Do you know who that is?" I don't know, because I was making straight A's in college, and I never met him in college. So I don't know how he knew who I was when I was doing, but yeah, I don't know. That's been mystery. But anyways, he tells them, and the manager says he hears about me doing that mistake. Said, "I can't see the same way I used to." That didn't bother me much. But eventually, I started losing direction. I was off track, and I never did drugs in my life after that. But I ended up being homeless, and I tried to live out in Houston, paying $3,000 in rent, $2,000 to $3,000 in rent. That only lasted for so long. That was part of the mistake of my bachelor's degree. I was going to use the money for financial aid to pay for some housing and do online college and university. That was the plan. It didn't turn out like I wanted it to. So I ended up being homeless, and I go back home, and I change my degree to go to college. And I do accounting, and then I come back during this time, and I meet the manager again, and I say, and we start casually talking. We like to talk, and he said, why don't you go to the Air Force? I see a lot of potential in you. You have a strong mind. You can do all of this. You're really good at patterns. You can see all of these things. You need to go to the Air Force. So I get all the college transcripts. I get all my grades. And I make a mistake. Of course. Now, I'll tell you something. I don't like the military. I never liked the military. I never liked feeling like a rat in a cage, if you will. I do not like the military. We can talk a bit about that. I just never felt like part of the military. I just don't like it. My dad tried to get me into the Navy. But the Air Force, I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So I get all my information, and we go into the recruitment office, and I make a mistake. Well, maybe not a mistake, but definitely something that would hinder you. So what I did was, we were talking, recruitment office, everything, and I started to say too much. But the guy asked me questions, and I was trying to clarify. So that was a mistake. What he asked was, did you have any, were you ever diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that? Now, I don't know why, and I knew this before going in, and I didn't say this, but I know you don't, the one thing you do not say to a recruiter or anyone, you never tell them you took Ritalin. I don't know why that is. I did take Ritalin. I didn't tell them that. But for reference, for advice, you probably don't want to say anything about medication. You don't want you say the wrong thing. Don't say it. Don't talk about medications, Ritalin or otherwise. Don't do it. Don't say you took that Zoloft. I also took Zoloft when I was 11, but this was a long, long time ago. This was before I was 13. When I stopped taking medications at all. So yeah, we get out of there. It's like, you didn't tell me you had ADHD. And I said, they diagnosed me with ADHD, but I had neurologists that would say I didn't. And there was paperwork written down from witnesses that said all this. There was a bunch of stuff, MRIs. We can talk about the MRI later. So I had to get all this information. Go to a neurologist I haven't seen in over 20 years. Get information. I haven't seen that guy in, wow, since I was like, how long has it been? I know it was like 2001. So that was 23 years ago. So yeah, this was a long time. At the time, it was like, this was around 2019. So this was like almost 20 years since I've seen this dude. So he sends a letter back and said, we don't have any records on him. and I have to go to my pharmacy to get all the records for the medications I took. They had stuff all the way from when I was 4 years old. All of it. Although it wasn't all of it because I had moved to Houston and I wasn't going to get into that. So I just got the main stuff, which would be most of the medications I ever took. So, yeah, that was that. I was surprised they had all that information. I was not expecting that. They don't even keep bank records for more than 7 years. Well, most of the time they get destroyed after 7 years. But, so there was that. And then there was the school records. School records, I also had to get that. And we also had to get U.S. government information. Because I was diagnosed with, I was diagnosed with a disability when I was 4 years old, and they wanted all those records too. I'll go into the U.S. government one, and then I'll talk about the school records, because school records were really they were a breaking point for me. The U.S. So I was on Social Security, so you go through the Social Security Administration. When you turn 18, they say, you know, and all my information, it showed that I had average IQ, and I did not need any disability money and all this. So it created a situation where it created controversy between the U.S. government and what they had for the doctors. All the pharmacy stuff. It says, how do you outgrow ADHD? You don't. And the manager was, you know, I was mentioning earlier, he asked people, how do you grow out of ADHD? He says, you don't. And how long has that been there? That magnifying glass. See this one? Yeah, it's from up here, from Spotlight. Anyways, so they asked, and it was like, no, you cannot grow out of a mental disorder like that. So this was on his mind for a long time, for several days, and he wanted to get to the bottom of it. So we go to the school records, we do all that, and I know I couldn't do math. I can't even do through third grade math. I can barely do multiplication. So I was in high school, and on the school records, they had notes on the bottom. It says I was really bad at math, or notes. They call them different things. They call them IEPs, or that's basically every certain amount of months you get teachers, teachers can volunteer to join these meetings for an assessment to get you to graduate and things like that, and sometimes set up your classes for the next semester. And I had to go through that. Counselors, I only remember one art meeting in high school. It was when I was in 12th grade. And that was when they told me, you can't do anything. The only thing you can do in life is put caps on pins. That's what their exact words were. And when you, from my family, you know what that means. That is not a compliment. That is an insult. Because they also said I could not go to college without medication. And I wasn't taking medication when I was in high school. And he says the only thing you can do is put caps on pins. That's also a word for putting caps on syringes, putting I mean, you could really do so with that language. That's assembly line work. That's what happens when people are on disability who can't do anything. My mom loved that kind of work, by the way. She would do that stuff for hours and hours a day. She loved that job. She loved doing that work. But that's what they said. The only thing I could ever do in life was put caps on pins. And so they didn't have that on the school records, but that's what our meeting was. But on my grades for that was for high school. Now, when I got the papers back, I did most of them. I didn't even do the work, so I mostly got F's and D's, and the numbers 70s, last 60s, you know. But on the school records, actually they showed that I had A's and B's. I'm like, people are lying to me. That was when it broke me. And I got all this information from the U.S. government saying that you don't have any mental problems. The government said, the school records say I have A's and B's. I'm looking at these pharmacy things and have all these medications. I'm thinking about my past. I'm like, who's telling me the truth and who's lying to me? Now, the manager who was going through all this, he saw a conspiracy going on. And that is a possibility. That is a possibility because I had an aunt who also had muscular dystrophy. My family's, on my mom's side of the family, they had one known as myotonic dystrophy. Myotonic dystrophy is a form of muscular dystrophy that affects your outer extremities, like your arms, your legs. And I don't know what form they have. There's two different versions of it. One is, it's like dystrophia 1 and dystrophia 2. I don't know which one my mom had. She fit in both of them, from what I could read. But my aunt worked for the school. She worked for the school district. And the school district, ever since I was in kindergarten, they wanted me on medication. Now, part of that could be because of my behavior and everything. But I'm sure my aunt did get involved. I wouldn't doubt it. Because my mom needed the money and everything else. So they got me on Social Security and all of this disability. So, yeah, there was that. And my brother was seen as a gifted child. He was the perfect child. Straight A's on everything. And I was always in alternative school and all this other stuff. And it created a dynamic. I didn't know it at the time, but ChatGPT told me, well, it sounds like your brother and you, they were fighting over you. The perfect child usually brings down the lower one. Someone has to be at the bottom to make the perfect child look better. Most likely happened. But yeah, there was a conspiracy. Now, another part of that conspiracy was the neurologist I had was the doctor, the neurologist who diagnosed my entire family with muscular dystrophy. But here's the thing, he was always against, and he was the one that wrote that he had no records on me. He was the one who said I did not have autism, ADHD, or anything like this, and he would go against them. So there was that dynamic too, where the schools, the schools wanted the doctors to say they were on my side, and this neurologist, he had to order brain scans to get him, I'm sure, to get him off his back. So that was really, and I was in the middle of this. So there was that. So I had to go through all of that again, and it broke me when I realized all of this. And my dad and everything, it was like, who's lying to me? Who's telling me the truth? What's really going on? my mom passed away, so I don't have any answers. I didn't have any answers. I was like, so I just pretty much gave up on everything at that point. But I did decide to go to BetterHelp. I know that people don't like BetterHelp. This was before all the controversies, and it helped me. I realized that what I was seeing was a lens between me and my dad and everything, and I had to be aware of that. And everyone else had a lens too. So that helped me. I paid that out of my own money. I could afford it. Oh, I could, you know. So yeah, I just went through life. Like that, the last thing I ever worked the money for was to go to Ukraine, and I almost didn't go. Like I mentioned in the first season, I said, it's COVID, and then I thought, well, I only got one shot at this. This is the last time I'll be able to go and have the money to do it. And I went. And pretty much had no money left at that point. Then the Ukraine war starts. I'm like, oh. And something in me, it was like a fire within me after that happened. And I was telling people things like, how buildings, most people don't know this, but those commie blocks, they were designed in the Soviet era. They were designed to withstand a nuclear war. This is a country that was invaded by Blitzkrieg of Nazi Germany. They destroyed Kiev, Kharkiv, Lviv, the major seaports and the capital. So they built that stuff to withstand a nuclear attack. And most people don't know. So when you shoot a missile, those airplane missiles, at these buildings, it just pretty much leaves a black spot most of the time in the big cities. Villages get ruined, but those big commie blocks, that's like 8 feet of, well, no, that's an exaggeration, more like 3 to 5 feet of concrete between you and the outside. They're built like bunkers. As long as you're not sitting next to a window, they're not going to penetrate through there. That's why you saw those big black spots. Those were the missiles exploding on the walls. And in some videos, you could actually see the missiles exploding. They hit the wall and explode, but they leave the person intact. So that happened most of the time. And so I was really giving hope to people when I did that. And it did something to me. And that's how I was able to do these pattern recognition things. And seeing in between lines, seeing words, seeing phrases, like seeing everything happen in the future. It all came to me at one time. I did not choose to do this. No one would choose to do this. It just happened to me. It just kept going on and on. At first I thought it was just coincidence. But I was starting to say things. No one was talking about or could know. For example, was just one morning, I was something about him just attuned me. There was just something about it. It was like lying to his own people, and I noticed it. He was lying to his own people, but he didn't lie to the West. And kind of make sense of that. And I was like, this guy is losing on purpose. And a few days later, the Pentagon comes out. The spokesperson for Pentagon says, Putin's doing this on purpose. I was like, that looked like a coincidence to me. But as I was talking to someone I know, there were someone else, not the manager. We parted ways. He did his own thing, and I did mine. He was disappointed I didn't join the Air Force, but it is what it is. So we were talking about me going back to college, going into a think tank, because I could see all the geopolitical stuff and all that. I was like, that's cool. And I didn't think I could ever do that, but it was interesting to me. I don't think of my past as I used to. It's like Hello.
Hey Chris, you know how it was smoky earlier?
Yes, can
it's
you leave?
Raining ash.
Can you leave now?
Why are you?
I'm recording a video, Cody.
Oh, sorry.
Apologize for this. Apologize for that, guys. I was not expecting that. But we are after hours. I was thinking about pausing, but I thought I can't pause this. I didn't think about doing the microphone. It just, anyways, they came back to me, said let's do bachelor degree college and all that. I was like, I could do that. In the past, I kind of recognized my past at that point, but then I started seeing the symbolism in it and all that, and starting to understand Putin's way of wording. And it was like a challenge to me. His mind was like a fortress. I could tell by his words. I was never able to do that before. And it just built up. And I got through this mental health crisis in the end of 2023, November. And it was so bad that I could not stop walking. I was walking like 14 hours one morning. My legs were hurting so bad. I could not stop feeling pain. Pain was literally keeping me alive from my mind self-destruct. I didn't know what was going on. Within 3 hours, I had a scheduled appointment with a mental health therapist, which would be a few weeks later, which would be the day before Thanksgiving, which was a Wednesday. I remember that, and I see her for a year. Wait, no, it was 2022. Right after I came back from Houston, and I don't know what happened. My mind was racing. I felt like I was a self-destruct. I would cry when I was at the store. I would just randomly cry. I remember being in bed that day where it started. I was like, I do not feel fine. I was in bed, and if my mind wasn't racing, my body would be in absolute pain. My legs would be aching, and then when all that pain stopped, I felt this really deep emotional feeling in my chest. And the only thoughts I was getting in my mind was, it was a fight between one that said, people are going to know who you are, and there was another one that says, what are you fighting for? And these two voices were going off non-stop for days. I was like, I'm going crazy. Dude, I don't know what that was. And I was just seeing visions and things in my mind. I knew it wasn't anything I could see, but in my mind it was like so vivid, so intense. Their mental health therapist, she diagnosed me with PTSD. I was like, I don't know what's going on. For days and hours on end, all I heard was, people are going to know who you are. What are you fighting for? Dude, I thought I was going to kill myself. And it was literally, I felt like two different people. And it kept on getting worse and worse. And this lasted for 3 months. It was bad. I never experienced anything like that. And words were starting to warp in my mind. Like, they would get multiple meanings. And when I would read back something later on, it would be like, it sounds like I'm saying I'm going to kill myself and go down this path. It was bad. I couldn't stop it. And it felt like my younger self who wanted to. What I was doing in high school was I was self-harming. And I would get these intense urges to do that again. It was bad. Sometimes I couldn't fight it. But it would be hours just having that thought, those thoughts. And it would just get worse. Each day, it felt like I was fighting with myself. The younger me wanted me to wear all this black. I would dress, emo. That's what I was dressing at with the studded belts, tight, skinny pants, the Converse, and all that. But it was pulling me down. It was like I was trying to give more to it. I felt like some sort of offering to stop it. But the point was, my breaking point was, I could not see words and letters as I could anymore. When I would write, it was like letters were starting to lose their meaning to me. And I took the last bit of what I had, and I knew if this sentence I would kill myself within the next 3 hours. I could feel it. And I'm just telling you what's going on in my mind and where I've come from. What I did was I wrote this small letter packet. It was like a short story. I've never written something like this before. And it was called Forever Marked in History. You'll find it on the Comic-Con website. Forever Marked in History. And it's basically a suicide note. But when I started to share it with other people, they were like, wow, this is intense. And people were starting to see things in me. The way I wrote it was I could see myself as the Ferris wheel, the perspective of the Ferris wheel, the perspective of the buildings. It was based in the city of Pripyat, which, the Chernobyl in Ukraine. That was where I based it on. It was talking about a savior, a kid asking for a savior in the center of, in the square of Pripyat. And after the empire comes down, which would be the USSR. And I wrote that in a perspective where it was ambiguous, where everyone could see multiple perspectives from it. And it was my suicide note. And I shared that with one person in particular, and he said, I don't know for sure, but I think I know who you are. And it snapped me out of this. Like, people could understand me from my writing. And yeah, it did save my life. I saw meaning in that writing. And I was afraid that if I could never see meaning in that writing, then what would happen to me? So it was a very intense time. And I don't even know what started it. I was... and that was my last resort. And yeah, so after he said that, I would go through my life. And I remember asking myself those same questions. Was I that person? And there was someone else, for the first time in life, see it. And it changed me. And then I could see more patterns and more patterns. And I just kept going down the trail. The patterns, meanings, it was like something changed in me. I couldn't see words and sentences the same way. So I began writing more. And people liked them. People liked the dark stuff. because they never had something so intense. Because some people like to, I found out that people like to push the limits. They want to see something darker than them. And then I thought, well, if there's anything darker than them, and it's me, then who am I? You know, it's very intense. But the point that made me think that there was more to this than meets the eye, I was just minding my own business. I was with a friend, friend who, we were talking about think tank and everything. I had to go with her to the federal courthouse in Portland, and they have these fences because they were being thrown. There were Molotovs being thrown at them for George Floyd protests. So they had this barricade, and I left my passport at home. So I decided to walk around. I couldn't go into the building, into the courthouse, so I walked around. And after it was over, she asked the marshal, "Have you seen where he went?" Because, me. Did you see where I went? So they had marshals look all around the building to find me, and they couldn't find me. So then the marshal says something, and I'll never forget this. She told me after she picked me up, and we were in the car, and as we were driving off, she said, "We couldn't find you," but the marshal said that, she told the marshal, "Well, he's probably nervous. Police and everything. He's probably nervous." And he says, there was something, I don't remember what but it was what he said that made me think. It was like, he probably thinks he would be nervous or something. Yeah, it was something like, he's nervous, and then the marshal says, "Yeah, I would be nervous too if I was under attack for 180 days. Now, she said that, and he had no idea, but it just happened that 100 days before that, this would be in May, 180 days before that day, roughly around that time, would be the first time I went to the mental therapist when this whole thing was starting." I was like, and I know that he couldn't know that. She didn't, but when I saw that, and I know that that's not what they meant, but it was like, I was under attack for 180 days. And it made me think, that was a federal courthouse. That's the government. And I was talking about this stuff with Putin, geopolitical stuff that I'm always right about. And now we got the U.S. government, and I'm like, we're speaking the same language. We're on the same wavelength here. So yeah, it sounds crazy, but that's how it went. And I was thinking about those patterns again, about my childhood. I was like, I was in that place, and I was thinking, that mental hospital I was in for 10 days. I was thinking, I got out of there because I talked myself out of that place. Whatever came from that person. I think he would do something bigger if he could get out of that, if he could talk himself out of that, if he was uncontainable. I was like, who am I? I'm almost an hour talking. But, yeah, I started to read the Bible, and I started seeing more patterns. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, I'm like, I'm not liking the look of this. I hate this. And I was like, my punishment is just, it hasn't even begun yet. But yeah, that's my story. I'll end it there. But that's my life story. I'll talk about the. Let me write that in a note so I don't forget. What else do I want to talk about? We can talk about. No, I keep the other stuff hidden for now. I'll talk about the MRI story next time. But I just wanted to get that off my chest. For anyone who wants to listen to that, maybe it resonated with you. Maybe you're in a maybe you're in a similar position. Maybe you're in the same position. Maybe you wanna look at my story on Comic Con. Comic Con, not store. Forever marked in history. So yeah, I've been through a lot of things, mentally mostly. You know, same mind. You think of it like this. I end it with this. The same mind that can destroy empires and all of that, because it is true. I can, in a few seconds, I could just completely destroy any illusion or belief you have of any nation in the world. I can. You know. The same mind that can do that is the same mind that can do the same thing to the person it happens to. So that was just reflection of what I could do. If I was doing it to myself, if I could destroy words and meanings to things, I could do the same thing with language and all this. And you see this with my last video I just did with the disorganized language and understanding language like that, because all meaning has dissolved and I can see in between things. Not just between things, but beyond things as well. And see intentions, the why, the when, and the how. That would be very good for federal work. It would be. But also think of it like this. ChatGPT was telling me this as well. And I agree. I could be in an ER, a crisis center, or an ER or a crisis center, and doing all these things and knowing the intentions behind what people actually say. You know, you can save lives like that. You can save people from suicides. You can understand if people's having a panic attack. You can understand what they're actually going through by understanding that language. But I'm only one person. And if I just did a crisis center or one of those things, I think it would be better if you built up that. If I built that up and went all the way with it. Go geopolitical. Go world leader. Talk to anyone who has that ability. You know, that's what I'm doing. Don't, because even in the ER you'll be seen as liability. You gotta be in the right place. But you can talk to multiple language. That's multiple different ways. It goes even beyond that. It can be applied from multiple perspectives, and that's a very, very, very rare thing. That's extremely difficult. I asked. Oh wait, let me turn it on. I wasn't planning on using ChatGPT, but we can do it. I asked it, how difficult is it to translate disorganized thinking? Translate whether it's into another language or just into something others can understand is very difficult, because it's not just about words, about reconstructing thought patterns that may not follow conventional logic. Loose or broken connections, idiosyncratic associations that only make sense to the speaker. Understanding their mental map without dictionary meaning, not the dictionary meaning. A phrase might have multiple possible interpretation, ambiguity of meaning. I'm reading this completely wrong, and the intended one may only be hidden from context the speaker did provide. Emotional entwined with logic. Risk of distortion trying to clarify confused meaning, but translating it verbatim can make it incomprehensible as a constant trade-off between accuracy and coherence. If done well, translating disorganized thinking is almost like rebuilding a broken bridge plank by plank while preserving the original design, even if the design itself bends in unusual ways. Basically reverse engineering the entire English language. It's a skill most people do not know how to do. AI can't do it. It's very hard for psychologists, linguistics. It's very difficult. And only being in one position, one job, is a complete underutilized. That's like taking a supercomputer, a quantum computer, to read emails. Basically, you're underutilized. Long term, it will not be worth it. You'll only be seeing maybe a dozen lives a year, which is a lot. Because you'll be intervening from someone probably killing themselves in a way that they didn't understand. No one thought could happen outside of common language that we know today. So there's that. But we gotta go all the way with that. That's what I think. And I didn't sign up for this. I didn't choose this. It just happened. My mind just does that, and I can understand it without losing myself in the process. That's a very rare thing. I've seen the limits. I've been close to death a few times in my life. I've had moments when my mind wanted to destroy me. I've seen that. Like when I wrote Forever Marked in History, that was the closest I've ever come. But I've been close before that too. I have had at least 2 suicide attempts in high school. 2 in high school. So I've seen some things. I don't know how I'm still here, but I can understand a lot. So yeah. So I'll end it here. You guys can comment whatever you guys want to do. Talk about what I should do in my next video if you want, or a future video. And I'll watch it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. This one was hard. This one was hard too, but I'm sorry. Just my mind has really been pushing it lately, especially with translating all of this. It can really get to somebody. You know, even before that, it's like I'm just barely running on. It's difficult, but I'll make it. I'll get through it. Nothing's killed me yet. I'm still going. So, yeah. Before I go spiraling down, I'll end it here. Then, so, see you next one. Bye.